Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Tuesdays with BOA. This is a collaboration between Writers and Books and BOA Editions. Writers and Books is a nonprofit literary arts center in Rochester, New York. We host readings and writing workshops for youth and adults, currently now all online. You can check us out at our website, wab.org. My name is Dan Hurd. I'm the Director of Adult Programs at Writers and Books. We're also joined by Peter Connors, who is the publisher of BOA Editions. This week, we're so happy to have Barbara Jane Reyes with us on the release of her book, Letters to a Young Brown Girl. We'll hear from Barbara, and then Peter and Barbara will talk. If you'd like to submit a question, you can use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. There's a little button there. And you can also purchase her book through our bookstore, Ampersand Books. I'll put the link to her book in the chat, so you'll see that. Barbara Jane Reyes is an Oakland-based author and educator who was born in Manila and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area. She is the author of 6 books of poetry, including Invocation to Daughters, Diwata, and the James Laughlin Award-winning Poeta in San Francisco. She teaches at the University of San Francisco. Barbara, thank you for being here, and congratulations on the book.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so nice to connect with folks on the other side of the country like this. Okay, so I think I am going to go ahead and get started. Thank you again, Dan. Thank you for hosting me. Thank you, Peter, for the conversation that we're going to have, and you know, and Ampersand Books for selling my book. This is Letters to a Young Brown Girl, and I wanted to point out this cover art, this stunning and beautiful cover art, which is an image called An Ally, Isang Ally, at Manananggal, and that is a Tagalog word for this kind of vampiric monster creature. And it is done by Maria Dumlao, who is a Filipina author, artist based in Philly. And, you know, what I love about this image is that through a red lens, you see one piece of the image, and through a green, you see another image. And so they're layered on top of each other. And I love that what we see here is just this kind of simple girl with these enormous bat wings. It just makes me so happy. So these are Letters to a Young Brown Girl, and I'm going to read poems from the mixtape section and from the actual letters themselves. Track, Gaze, Sweetback featuring Amel LaRue. Squeeze your hand into a fist. Now loosen just a bit. They say that is the heart, heat, fiber, sugar. Cut around its core, score and invert. Take your teeth to its golden flesh and bite. They say this is the heart of a lovely girl. In these stories, there is always a girl, lovely as that dream just before waking. There is always a girl whose dainty feet make light where she toe taps the earth so soft. Elders tell her patience will saint her, and so she waits. There is always heartbreak, chambers washed in longing, pulsing dark inside the body. She waits. They say she waited with the waning moon until dawn. She waited. Press your index finger and tall finger into the underside of your jawbone and count. Track, My Life by Mary J. Blige. Back in the day, we burned white sage. We filled our small spaces with lavender and sunlight. We were such love-thirsty brown girls, aching, unslaked. How do you fill a vessel of want? Back in the day, always on the edges, looking into others' tidy white lives. when we subsisted on cheap tea and nicotine, when our belongings, mostly poem-filled notebooks, fit neat into milk crates. Back in the day, we wished to be so beautiful in our darkness. We occupied nowhere, stared into spaces we didn't think we'd belong. We walked if we didn't have bus fare. If you look at our lives back in the day, you will see such sad girls, so much unmet grace. Track, Black-Winged Bird by M. Greiner. We won't hold our tongues fast. We won't unforget all the things we've been made to stuff back into our darkest places and so shut. We know the heart heals with time and that bruises heal too. We know how to leave a boy who hurts with words or fists. We know how to ghost a boy who doesn't even deserve our ghost. We know how to change numbers and locks, that sometimes behind a bolted door, the only thing that will keep us company is a good record collection and fire. We remember not to say sorry. Creak, croon, and trill, moan low. Go ahead, open your mouth so wide that you can swallow the sea. Know that your blood pulls you through what your oldest ancestors committed to heart. Remember, you have touched the ocean floor and you have made your garden there. Remember, your skin is thick. Remember, no one has tamed you. Yes, you are immense, your lifespan and memory long. Your heart larger than a full-grown man. Your lungs carry air for us all. Your rib cage could be a refuge. Your skull is a cavern of deep song. Through murk and poison, you move true with the moon. Your body lights a million lanterns. Your deep-pitched song finds your sisters, your mother. They say the earth's most unruly parts sing like you. Okay, and then this is from the Dear Brown Girl letters. Dear Brown Girl, after all this, you still ask me how it is I arrived at the poem. I want to tell you about my rounded, looping penmanship in berry-scented ink. I want to tell you about typing my words on an old typewriter, pushing its carriage return, poems with no correction tape. I want to tell you about drafts upon handwritten drafts, about the smell and feel of so much cream and marbled Florentine paper, about cutting class and taking the afternoon to shop for handcrafted notebooks and writing implements. I want to tell you about my pink-inked lowercase i's dotted with chubby hearts. I held so much unrequited sweetness. I want to say I was waiting, but I don't know what I was waiting for. So much ache, so much breaking. I want to say so much about silencing and time. Dear Brown Girl, remember those diaries we were gifted as young girls, pale pink and floral, embossed with golden curly cues? Remember that tiny golden lock and precious key? Remember wanting to crawl inside and hide there? Remember how not speaking yielded so many secrets? Remember how you'd write and write, like if you didn't write, you'd just die. Like if anyone ever read what you wrote, you'd just die. They'd say, "Artista ka talaga, sus Mariosep anak." And you'd cry. Of course you'd cry. Remember when you were 19, your poems were so honey-coated. Your language was not really your language. It was so sugary, fancy, and high. You wrote about things you didn't know how to write about. 19-year-old girl living on top ramen and minimum wage. Remember how you blew a whole paycheck on a Waterman Laureate mineral blue fountain pen and tender purple ink? How you transcribed your finished poems into the matching hardbound violet marble journal, edged with gold leaf. You love that scratch of gold-plated nib onto paper. You gazed at each glossy page air drying before you turned the page or closed the book. Dear brown girl, nobody ever read your poems back then. And then again, none of those poems were for them, diba? Dear brown girl, what is there to fear in your silence? When you do not speak, do you hear your own footfalls, your breath, your measured gait? Can you feel tension and give of earth with every step? Can you feel how terrain changes underfoot? What does this tell you about the sprawl and tangle of roots, about seeds that open only when fire comes? What happens when you pay attention? What happens when you step outside of words? What do you learn about heartbeat? Can you hear the single leaf fall to the soil? And when there is rustle through limbs, through hollowed trunks, do you know what living thing moves into the underbrush? Can you see its tracks? Can you catch its scent? If you know how to listen, there is an entire language of water and earth, wings and husks and legs, heat and birth. What do you find when you sit with yourself inside your silence? And I think I'm going to end with one last Dear Brown Girl letter. Dear brown girl, what if nobody reads you but every young, hungry brown girl who crosses your path? Please let them be visible to you. Their eyes are so wide, they have rarely ever seen a woman like you before. They see you speak like you have forgotten the fear, the harm speaking brings brown women like you, daughters of spilling bodies and sutured mouths. They never knew brown women like you were real, speaking head held high, speaking like you know, because you know, and because you know that you know. They're holding your words so close to their bodies, the way we were all taught to cradle a newborn babe, like they were taught to hold God's words so close to their hearts. They are breathing in your pages. They can't bear to remember what it was like before they found you. What if they are the only ones who ever read you? Would that be so bad? Okay, I think I'm going to stop there. Thank you all so much for listening.
I am clapping for you.
Oh, thank you.
It's such a treat to hear. I mean, this is the publication day of Letters to a Young Brown Girl, and to actually like go through the whole process with you and to be here more or less with you on the day the book comes out is really just sort of miraculous. So thank you for sharing those. And I think if you don't mind, maybe at the very end, you can read one more and we'll leave a little bit of time to
okay.
close out with.
Absolutely.
So one of the questions that I had thought about with this book is, you know, you have so many different forms that you use throughout the book. And I started to think of the Robert Creeley, you know, the old form is never more than an extension of content, the sort of chicken and the egg argument with poetry. And I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about the relation between content and form in this book.
Sure. Okay, you know, and I was actually going through my notes for teaching the other day. One thing that I do teach in a Filipina lit class is a lot of epistolary, and so letters and diaries. And one of the things that comes up all the time with diaries is just how secret they are, right? And how private, that those are words not really meant for anybody else but yourself. And then if you're writing a letter, then to one other soul that you're trusting with what you're saying. And so, you know, how do you take that kind of intimacy and put it into a book that's going to be read by who knows how many other people, many of whom I will never meet. But, you know, so I was thinking about that, just the intimacy and the kind of stereotypically female kind of form, you know, that that the epistolary takes. You know, we're constantly discouraged from, and not just as brown girls, but I think as girls in general, you know, a lot of us are discouraged from speaking our minds and from having strong opinions and dissenting, and you know, that we never really do have a forum for what we really think and what we really feel. So there's that. And then you add the layer of being a brown girl, a girl from an immigrant family who, you know, who has been taught, keep your head down and work hard and don't make waves and succeed, you know. So where do you put all of that brimming anger, you know, if not in these real private spaces? Yeah, so I think that's a lot of what I was thinking, you know, with the epistolary. And, you know, and it's funny because when I first started writing these poems, one thing I did was via social media, I turned to my community and I asked them, folks, what kinds of questions do you have for me? You know, and, you know, whether it was about writing or about teaching or, you know, whatever. And a lot of the kinds of questions these young and not so young Filipino women were asking me were, they were so eye-opening, you know, about like having writing and thoughts and ideas that didn't jibe with the mainstream and that didn't like feel like they belonged in literature, because, you know, the stuff that we think is always kind of fringe and, you know, kind of niche, I guess, right? You know, and then one person straight up asked me, like, is it okay that my boyfriend is white? I was like, oh my God, what kind of a question is that, right? Like, why are you trusting me with that kind of question? What am I gonna say that's going to assuage you, you know? But there's that kind of confidence that comes between the correspondence, right? So I think that would be the biggest chunk of my ideas on epistolary.
That's excellent. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Some of my favorite music conversations that I've had have been with poets. I will say, I think every poet is like, you know, a rock star somewhere in their brain, and we're all obsessed with music. And so I'm, you know, the music that you pick for the track listing is so specific. So I'm curious how you came to those songs, and also what sort of keys those were to unlock new ideas and new perceptions.
Okay, yeah, right, the track list. A couple things, you know, as a kind of related aside, I was listening to U2 radio on you know, on satellite radio, and it was record store day. And so these, you know, folks who were guest DJing were talking about the importance of record stores to them when they were growing up and just getting into the arts. Like those were sacred spaces to them, the way that bookstores are, right? You're there looking for, I don't know exactly what everybody is looking for when they enter a bookstore or a music store, but there is, you know, something that happens where your mind opens, right? And you're exposed to other people's ideas and aesthetics from, you know, all kinds of different places. So you might not get in your suburban private school or, you know, whatever, which was my experience going to the suburban Catholic school and needing a place to kind of go find other ideas. So that's why, you know, the mixtape section. And I was thinking about the songs that, you know, were kind of literally on the cassette tapes that I made when I was taping on my tiny little boombox onto cassette tapes when I was in junior high and then high school. And then, you know, later on in college, my college roommates and I were constantly borrowing one another's CDs to make these mixtapes. And they would always kind of go back to like, here's Mary J. Blige, that's right, girl, you know, and like there was a certain kind of, you know, that like set the vibe in our shared house space and, you know, in our community spaces. So, you know, like what was I listening to when I was an angsty, emotional, you know, young girl? And then what were we listening to, me and my girlfriends in college, you know, when I was, when we were just going through all the heartbreak that we put ourselves through. And I think that was also, who were we listening to that were these women of color that were saying the things that we were feeling but afraid to say, you know? So when I heard Erykah Badu for the first time, I was like, you know, wow, you know, how is this not informing, you know, my desire to be a poet any more than, you know, reading into Zaki Shange, you know? So I think that it was a lot of that going on with the music section. So, yeah. And, you know, when you are making a mixtape, and gifting it to a person, you are handing them a very personalized, curated gift. So, you know, I always like to use the example of the love interest that you hand a tape to, and it's all these songs of longing. But, you know, we were doing this too for our best girlfriends, that these were the songs that were like, be strong, yes, we got this, you know. So, yeah.
Yeah, for me, even the word mixtape like makes me happy. Like it evokes so much inside of me, and I'm thinking like, I wonder if playlist translates at all to mixtape right now. But I don't know. There's something about the actual physical tape and handing it over, and you know, making the label out and all those different things. So
absolutely.
I'm curious, Barbara. In addition to your poetry and your teaching, you've had a long career in public health.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about overlap, maybe how public health, your work there informs your poetry, or how those two pursuits touch each other.
Okay, yeah, I know that a long time ago, one of the things that I remember I was just learning about HIPAA. That was a rule that is now a law, I guess. And all of that legalese was something that kind of informed a lot of the way I approached language, because it was so difficult. But then I realized, you know, more than just a day job, public health actually became something that, you know, specifically working in, I'm an analyst in a quality improvement department, which is something that people are like, what, you do what? So we're very much about specificity. We're very much about like, you know, effectiveness of language in the most concise ways possible that are just concrete and, you know, just never vague, you know. And then also just the fact that I have worked in a community that that has served the most kind of underserved folks in Oakland. A lot of teens, girls, women who, you know, we need to fight for their reproductive rights. We need to fight for their safety from, you know, like domestic abuse and, you know, from being trafficked and things like that. You know, is something that is happening every day of my working life for the last 20 years, you know, that, you know, a woman could be dying of cancer, but we can help her, you know, because there's nothing else anybody is willing to do out there in the system. But we have this community that, you know, that will, you know, take her in and, you know, so I feel like that has really informed my feminism. I feel like that's probably the best way to put it, especially in regards to, you know, women who are immigrants, women who are, you know, mothers with very few resources, teenage girls who, you know, we don't want them to grow up and get trafficked. Yeah. So, you know, certainly I never take from them and make work, art from them, because I feel like that's kind of exploitative, but it definitely has informed like the way that I approach power dynamics and just like, you know, like really kind of understanding this is a social reality. This isn't just stuff that is like novel or edgy raw material in the poetry. Yeah.
I'm curious what poets you're reading right now, or maybe what poets you return to often.
Okay. You know, I recently read this wonderful first book by Monica Ong, and it was published on Kore Press, Kore, called I'm totally blanking on the name of her book, but Monica Ong's book, Silent Anatomies, and it is a visual poetry, so poetry, image, collection of work that is very much about the body, about kind of what is forbidden to speak of as a woman, about your own body, kind of historically. You know, she does that with, you know, ultrasounds and, you know, X-ray radiology images and old family portraits and things like that. And it's really gorgeous, gorgeous work. So there's that. That's one of my favorite collections, and I love teaching it. Who else have I read recently that just kind of went, wow? You know who I do return to a lot is Al Robles, who's a San Francisco poet who passed away probably about a decade ago. And he was making poetry right on the kind of outskirts of North Beach, right? So we're North Beach and Chinatown and the former Manila town, and then all of that kind of with the financial district pushed up against it. He was the one who was writing about you know, deadly effects of gentrification, I think before I even knew the word gentrification, right? How the poor and the immigrants are being pushed out to make things like parking lots, you know? Yeah, and he was a Zen monk. He was a jazz pianist. And I don't know a lot of people in like poetry courses that actually like talk about him. You know, because they see his work as maybe a little too kind of freewheeling, but it's like, no, you can see the Zen Buddhism there. You can see, you know, you can hear the jazz, right? You can hear those things. You just kind of need to look a little closer. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to read, we have one question from Allison Myers. And,
okay.
If you would take us out with a poem, that would be excellent. So let me read Allison's question here. She says, is this a book you could not have written even 10 years ago?
Great question. Allison, this is a book I could not have written 5 years ago. And I think I had to kind of get myself okay with, in Tagalog, we have a term ate, which means elder sister, right? And in community, folks start to call you that when you've been around for a while, right? You know, especially if you are their teacher or, you know, you mentor them in one way or another. And I was never comfortable with that because I did not grow up with those terms. So when people started calling me ate, I kept kind of stepping back and kind of going, no, you know, we're not, it's not like that. But then I realized that, like, okay, sure, I can be an ate in the community and, you know, not feel self-conscious about never having grown up with these Filipino terms. You know, I just didn't grow up with them being, nobody ever called me ate, and I have younger sisters, and, you know, so, you know, so when I think I settled into that, it was easier to just kind of go, okay, dear brown girl, what do I need to hear? What does my 19-year-old me need to hear now that I'm pushing 50? Okay, I think I'm good. Yeah. But definitely like 10 years, 5 years ago, this book would have just, I think the voice that I had back then was of the younger speaker kind of looking for elders. And now I'm like, oh my God, I'm the elder. Damn, I'm going gray, I'm the elder, you know? So that's how that's going for me. Okay. Yeah, you want a poem? Let's see. Mixtape or Dear Brown Girl poem, Peter? Your choice.
Let's do a mixtape.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so I do also have some poems by, oh yeah, this one here, if you were around in the mid-90s and listened to, you know, high energy and stuff, then maybe you know a little bit of Jocelyn Enriquez, a little bit of ecstasy. Every single thing our titas cannot bear to see. Every single bit of native skin, flashing, island warm, hella not Castilian, hella not Espanol, every single bit of not Euro nose and not Anglo eyes. Every full hip sway, every long braid whipping around, every body piercing, gleaming golden, every lush stroke, every raised eyebrow, every dark full lipstick, bronzed as bourbon and beam and glorious nape and clavicle bared, every bit of high-heeled, wide stance, fist to open hands. Every single thing our pearl-clutching titas wished us not to be. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for
Yeah.
being here, Barbara. What a treat. I know that people can get letters to a young brown girl through the link that Dan's been putting up. So we really
Excellent.
appreciate
Yeah.
you taking the time to be here, and congratulations on Letters to a Young Brown Girl.
Thank you.
All right, we'll talk to you later.
Okay, talk to you all soon. Bye.
Bye.